Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about creating repeating patterns that increase or decrease in size. I'm going to be showing you how to create this scale type pattern in this tutorial, but these are just some other examples of patterns you can create using this approach. I noticed that the patterns with circular motifs, like this one or this one where the pattern is essentially derived from circles, are a little bit easier to handle. Patterns that have sharp edges like this and points are a bit trickier because it's hard to get the spacing totally consistent sometimes. This one worked pretty well, but I think you can see it a little better right in here. Or like this pattern, for example, at this transition area where there are points and 90-degree angles, it's hard to align seams perfectly. But, you know, on the scale of a piece of jewelry, which is more like this, I think it's pretty effective. And the nice thing is, the approach I'm going to use is totally parametric. I'm going to be using object on curve or dynamic object on curve and then combining it with other dynamic commands to create really versatile, flexible patterns. Before I get started though, I want to just talk about pattern creation in general. So let me just bring these up. Okay. Anytime I'm creating a new pattern, I always like to study it and figure out what the fewest amount of components that will be necessary to make up a repeating pattern. And in most cases, it's usually one component or maybe two. And once I figured that out, then the tricky part is devising some kind of way of laying that pattern out, or some guiding structure that shows you how to copy your element. So these are just examples of the individual elements I used in all of these designs. So, you know, obviously this is that scale pattern, and then this marquee shape just arrayed around a point here resulted in this pattern. So I used object on curve here, and then I used a polar array. So I flowed the objects just in a singular line, and then I arrayed them around. And this is obviously two pieces. One is a little bit higher, and you can see how I just tilted those at a 45-degree angle to create this pattern. And the honeycomb is a little different. I used these hexagon extrusions more like punches. So I laid them out, and then I took the second step of subtracting them from a surface to create the honeycomb pattern you see here. So the basis for my patterns that increase or decrease is object on curve. I mean, that's the main command, but as I said, I'm combining it generally with other dynamic commands to make really flexible patterns. Okay, so enough about that. I'm going to show you how, I'll show you what I'm going to be making. Let's see, here's a picture of it. Gosh, it's taking a long time. Okay. I'm going to show you how to make these earrings. So I'm going to use this scale pattern, and I'm going to decrease its size here and just stick it in an earring. So I'm going to do kind of two parts. First, I'll show you how to make the repeating scale pieces, and then I'm going to model the earring. So I'm just going to move this over here, and I'm going to grab the rest of this and just delete it. Okay. Let's see. I guess I'll just keep these here for reference. That's fine, but I'm going to just hide them for now. or it. Anyway. Okay, so the first thing to do is let's just bring this reference image back. Whoops. My hiding strategy didn't work very well. Okay, I'm going to put these on white. Yeah. Okay, I'll just look from the top here. Okay, so, you know, it's pretty obvious what the element is here. It's just the scalloped bit. But I need to come up with a way of laying out these scallops horizontally and vertically, and I have had some time to think about it, so I'm just going to show you what I came up with. But obviously, if you were just encountering this for the first time, there would be a fair amount, or for me anyway, there is a fair amount of just sort of thinking about the best way to achieve something, and usually it's, you know, plotting some points out and just experimenting. So I'm going to start with a circle. I'm just going to type circle. I love deformable circles. It's just my preference. I like that you can determine the number of points ahead of time, and I usually go for a 12-point circle, so that's good. And I'm going to start at on yellow in the center, and I'm just going to make a 6mm circle. Okay. Now I'm going to put some points on this circle to orient a few other circles next to it. So I have a quick command. It is this divide curve by number of segments. I use it a ton. If you're looking for it, it's over here under point object. And actually there are two kind of similar commands. This one, divide curve by length. You can determine the length that you want to divide the curve by, obviously, and then this one just divides it by a number of points. And I use this one a lot. In fact, I use these two commands a ton when I'm creating patterns, and they're history enabled, so if you use them, so I'm going to select my curve, and actually I'm going to move my seam up here, and I want 12 points, and I want the to group the output. If you change the size of your curve, they will update to the new length. So that's pretty useful. Okay, so now I'm going to copy this circle from this point over here, and then I'm going to mirror this. Actually, no, I'm just going to make another copy. I'm going to copy this from this point to this point, and here, I'll just undo that. So I'm going to copy it from this point to this point, and then again to this point. Okay, so now you may be able to see that this scallop shape has emerged. I'm going to get rid of these points. I don't need them anymore. And I also have a system of laying it out and repeating it. Because I have these 4 individual circles. So I could just use these circles to trim themselves and then use this scallop, but because I want this pattern to overlap, I'm going to actually use the offset command, and I'm just going to offset this circle toward the inside. I'm going to choose through point, and then I'm going to say 0.3. Let me try it again. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Okay, and now I'm going to select this curve and this curve and this curve, and I'm going to run the curve Boolean command. And I want to delete all of the input. And then I'm just going to select inside the region I want to keep, and I'm going to right click. And so now I have my curve. Before I go further, I'm just going to do a little bit of work to it. I'm going to fillet these points. 0.2 is fine, so I'm just going to fillet all the points. I'm just right clicking to run the command 3 separate times. And now I just want to check to see where my seam is. I want to keep it at this 12 o'clock point. And usually when you fillet curves, the seam jumps around. So it's a good thing just to know where your seam is. Actually, I'm going to put it at 6 o'clock. I'm going to put it down here. Okay. So now let's just look at this reference image a little bit here. Maybe you can see that these scales are sort of rounded and smooth looking. And I could just extrude this red shape and use that as my initial scale, but it would be very blocky without the smoothness that I would like. So I'm going to create a sphere, and then I'm going to manipulate it a little bit, moving the surface points around, and then I'm going to use this curve and an extrusion that I make from it to chop into the sphere like a cookie cutter. So I'm going to just run sphere. I want 2 points. I'm just going to snap it from here to here. I'm going to put it on light green. And then I want to turn this so the seam is at 12 o'clock. And I'm going to turn the points on. I have an alias for points on. It's just PO. And I want to rebuild this sphere. And 12 by 8 is fine. I like that. And I'm going to deselect current layer because I want it to stay on light green. Okay. Now from the front, I'm going to move some of these points around. First, I'm going to window select all of these bottom points, and I'm going to just grab this handle, which is obscured by the point here, and I'm going to type 0 to make all of these points planar. And then I'm going to pull them up toward the ground plane. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. Just going to grab the handle, 0 them, and then I'm going to hold shift and just bring them out a bit. Okay, so now I have something that's sort of like a gumdrop. And before I do anything else, I actually just want to move these. I want to push the seam toward the 12 o'clock point. And it'll be obvious why I'm doing that in a minute, but I'm just going to do it now. So I'm going to grab this point, and I want this point, and then I'm just going to grab 1 point in this loop and 1 point in this loop, and then I'm going to type cell U, which just grabs all the points in the U direction in that loop, and I'm going to just pull with the gumball over to the side here. And then from the right, I'm going to grab all of these points, and then I'm just going to rotate them because I want to make this sphere into more of like a wedge shape, almost like a doorstop, because I want these to overlap and I want there to be definition between each overlapping piece. It doesn't really matter what this looks like or what's going on here. I'm just going to actually do cell U again, and then I'm going to bring these down a bit. This is the important area right here that I want to work with. So this looks pretty good. I'm curious to see how this will look if I start to array it or make it into a repeating pattern. So I'm going to stop, and I'm just going to move this. And I'm going to move it from this quad point here down here. Okay, and now I'm going to grab my red curve, and I'm going to come over here to dynamic extrude, and I'm just going to say both sides and cap, and then I'm going to just make sure this is above my object. And I'll just right click to accept that. I can already tell that I don't want this belly like this sticking out. So I'm just going to turn on the points again, and I'm just going to grab these, cell U, and then just scale them a little bit inward toward the center. Okay, that looks good for now. Okay, now I'm going to use a dynamic Boolean intersection. So I'm just going to grab this light green object and then this extrusion. And now I have my wedge. And because I'm keeping this light green object intact, I can continue editing my wedge as I go. But I'm going to hide it just for a moment. Now I'm going to make some copies of this to see how the pieces fit together. So I'm just going to say copy from this point to this point, one here, and copy is history enabled, so if you update the parent, all the children will change as well. Okay, so this is pretty good. I like the looks of it so far, but I want this edge here to be really within this piece in front of it. So I'm just going to turn this back on, and I'm going to grab these control points. Oh, I have an alias for cell U. It's just U and enter. So sorry if I didn't make that clear. And now it's counterintuitive. I'm going to pull toward 6 o'clock, or I'm going to pull to the right, and I'm just going to try and get these to overlap a bit more. And I have a little bit more room here that I can pull them. Now they are beginning to overlap. I'm just going to bring this down a little bit, and then out. That's looking pretty good. Maybe I'll just push it a little bit more. A good overlap is going to make the pattern increase and decrease a lot easier. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to turn, let's see, what am I going to do? Okay, now it's time to build the earring and then just create my pattern on the earring. So I'm going to slide all of this out of the way though, because I'm going to be creating my earring in the middle, but I don't want to, I want to keep this intact because as long as this light green surface is part of this Boolean, and let's just label this here since I'm going to do a few of these. Intersection. I always like to say which kind of Boolean it is. I'm going to say extrusion and, oh, did I spell that right? Extrusion and surface. Okay. So as long as this Boolean is still active, I can continue editing this sort of all the way till the end of the whole process. So I'm just going to grab this red curve, this green surface, and this yellow curve, and I'm just going to slide these over here. And as you can see, because copy is a history enabled command, I can just keep all this whole group together. Okay, so what I need to do now is I'm just going to create a few more repeats of this element. So I'm just going to grab these two. Actually, let me just hide this one. I'm just going to grab these two, and I'm going to copy them from this quad point to this quad point. And then I'm going to mirror these using this quad point as a snap. And so now I have the pattern that I'm going to be working with. And I can still edit it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's get back to this earring situation. I created some curves ahead of time to create this bit. So in order not to take endless amounts of time showing you. I'm just going to import those now. So I have them job bagged. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to be just using these curves and then using some dynamic curve commands to create this earring, just one half of it, and then when I'm done I'll mirror everything over. So the first thing I want to do is trim this. It's kind of like a ghosty backward question marky deal. I'm going to use dynamic trim, so let's find that. And as I said, well, first of all, let's just rename this so I know which one is which. I'm going to say main earring. I'm doing it in 2 halves, so I'm just going to snap to this midpoint, and then I'm going to bring this side just above this spiral somewhere. Again, I can always move these later. And then I'm just going to right click to run that command again on the spiral, and I'm going to bring, I want the spiral to go all the way in, but I want it to start more like, oh, like here. I'm just going to rename this spiral. It does take time to label everything, but I do find that it makes editing quite a bit easier when things are labeled clearly. Okay, and now I'm going to use dynamic blend curves. I'm just going to grab these two, and I want to join these. Oh, it looks like I have to flip the first curve, and I'm just going to leave it like this. Again, as usual, I can edit this, so that looks good for now. Actually, you know, I can see that I don't like it already. You know what, but I think that is the trim spot, so I'm just going to back it off a little bit. Okay. And now I have these other 2 curves over here, and I like to use custom curves in my profile placer a lot, and while there is a command somewhere, where is it, to add them to your library. I don't even remember where it is, because oh, here it is. I really don't use it that often, and I don't actually save curves that often, because I can never really tell what they were for or what job I use them in, and it's quick enough just to create new ones each time. And I like these 2 because they both have 12 points. In fact, this curve that is a square is just a duplicate of this circle with the points shoved around a little bit. And I want to transition in this piece from a squarish profile to a circular one, and I don't want any weird surface strangeness. So I like to use curves that will work well together and transitioning from one shape to another. Okay, but I am going to use profile placer, and this is the way that I get my custom curves in generally. I'm just going to leave the orientation just as it is, but I'm going to grab profile editor. I'm going to preemptively delete this. I'm going to use add from Rhino, and I'm just going to come here and grab this curve and say yes. And I'm going to bring another one of these down here, and I'm going to make this different, maybe 1.6 by 1.6. And I'm going to bring all the way to the end, but now I'm going to change this to the circle, so I'm going to go back into Profile Editor, get rid of this square, use this command again, and then just grab my circle. And I'm going to make this quite a bit smaller, maybe 1 by 1 by 6. We'll see. I can change these around. And then I'm going to make a few more. I'm going to put one here, and I'm going to put one here. Okay, and let's just see. I can activate auto sweep for a preview, and I can see that this sweep works really nicely. I really like the way that looks. Might make this one a little taller. And I'll make it, maybe I'll make it 2.5, and then I'm gonna just lift it up a bit. All right. And now that I've seen, ooh, this one is too fat. Let's go with 1.6. Okay. So now that I've seen the way it looks, I'm going to turn off Activate Auto Sweep, and I'm going to create the surface with a sweep instead. Now, I could just take this piece and then sweep the whole thing. And the problem is, though, that if I want to use it in any kind of Boolean operation, I'm going to have self-intersecting surfaces. So I'm just going to do a series of sweeps. Oh, let's name this. Okay, so I'm going to find sweep 1. Where is it? Here it is. I'm going to select my rail, and then I'm going to select just these 3 to start. And I'm going to call this 1. All right. I'm going to just right-click to run that again. I'm going to select my same rail, and then I'm going to select this profile and this profile. And I'm going to rename it 2. And I'm going to do it one more time with this and this profile and this profile. And I'm just going to call it 3. Okay, so now I can create a Boolean with this, but first I'm just going to fill that space with a sphere. Let's do it from the front. I'm going to just snap it right in here. Oops, I want to be on green actually. Oh, you know what? I'm going to be on light green. This looks okay. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and now from the right, I'm going to turn on wireframe, and I'm going to just rebuild this just the same way that I did with that initial sphere. I say okay to this, and then I'm going to grab these control points. I'm just going to hold Alt so I don't select things I didn't intend to. And I'm just going to zero these out. And then from the back, I'm just going to scale them up a little bit so they really fill this space up from the back. Okay, and now from the front, let's see, just turn this off. And that looks pretty good. Again, I can continue editing that. Okay. I think I might make this profile a little bit, well actually, let me just Boolean these. So I'm going to use dynamic Boolean union. I'm going to select this and then these surfaces. Okay. I'm going to rename this. Earring half. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I'm going to just see how these interact with one another. So I'm just going to do a quick mirror, not a dynamic one for now. Okay, I don't like how much they're colliding. So I'm going to turn light green on, turn it to wireframe. I'm going to grab my spiral, and and actually my sphere too, or my gumdroppy thing. Where is it? And my spiral. And I'm just going to hold this 2D scale and just bring these down a bit. Okay, and then maybe I'm going to come up and out a bit. Maybe a little bit more. Oop, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, let's see. So this looks okay. I might just change the blend a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to stop here, although I might make this profile just a tiny bit thinner, so I'm going to maybe do 1.2 here. Okay, I like that. I'm just going to stop now because you know, you can refine this however you want, but I'm not going to take any time to do that. So I'm going to turn this light green layer back on for a second, and then I'm going to use dynamic blend curve. Oh, let me just rename this one since I'm going to be using another one. Main earring. Okay, I'm going to use blend curve, and I'm just going to select this same curve twice. And there are 2 points here, but they're just on top of each other. So I'm going to drag the second point, and I'm going to hold shift to snap right to the midpoint, and then I'm going to just straighten these out. And I'm just creating a curve now that I can run my object on, my objects on for object on curve. So that's what I'm going to call it. I'm just going to rename it object on curve. Okay, I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to also extrude this curve because I want a target surface to orient my objects to. Okay, and I'm just going to say object on curve also. Okay, so now I can turn light green off, and I'm going to come up here to solid and object on curve, and I can select this curve, press enter. And I like to kind of eliminate objects before importing new ones, just because sometimes if you ask this command to do too much, its brain explodes. And also, I like using these options up here in the command line. They're just the same as these. I just find it easier to use them for some reason. Okay, so I'm going to select new objects. And as far as I can tell, the max for multiple objects is 10. I haven't been able to get above 9. I don't know that for sure, but just trial and error. So I have 7 objects here. I'm just going to grab them. Okay, and then I'm going to right click. I'm going to use the target object as this. And then from the front view, I'm going to just use some of these handles. I'm going to rotate these. And just, again, trial and error. I've already determined like what a good size is here. So first I'm going to start at 18. And then I'm going to choose taper end and taper spacing. I'm going to make my end size 8, well, maybe 8.5. And I'm going to make my spacing minus 13.5. And I just know that that's worked because I've done this already a couple times. And I didn't want to waste a lot of time figuring out what would work best. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to right click to accept that. I'm going to hide this yellow business. Okay, so here we go. Here is the pattern. I'm just going to do a few things to it. I'm going to come back in here, and I'm going to push it toward the front. I want the back to be kind of contained within my earring frame. So I'm just going to keep pushing it like this. And I might just push that profile back a little bit too. So that looks okay. I'm going to right click. And I can see that this is just kind of too fat. So remember, I can come over here and I can grab my light green object, and I can scale in one direction from this quad point. Let's do this from the front. I'm just going to hold shift, and I'm going to snap to this point, and then I'm going to just bring it down, maybe to about 2/3 the height. And now we can see as it updates, it's updating not only the copies, but also the pattern that I have created here. So let's take a look now. So now it's a little too far forward. I'm going to come back into this command and just bring it back. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, it's not quite finished, but I'm going to grab this curve one more time. I'm going to extrude it. I got to flip it and cap it. And I'm just going to bring it up here, and I'm going to call this inside. Okay, and then I'm going to use that same strategy with dynamic Boolean intersection. I'm going to grab these objects and this object. Let me take a second, and then let's just rename this scales, oops, and extrusion. It really bothers me when I misspell things, even when no one else is going to ever see them. Okay, so it's still a bit far forward, so I'm going to just turn yellow off here for a sec. I'm going to bring these back. Where is it now? Just a little bit. I just don't want to bring them, you know, through the extrusion base because I don't want them to be totally flat. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I'm just going to do one more thing. I'm going to bring this back just a little bit. Okay. So I really like that. I like how you can see the scales from both sides, even though that's the back of an earring. Okay, and then I'm going to quickly add a few other little flourishes to this. I'm going to grab a iso curve from this surface, and I'm almost done, I swear. I know this, you've been watching for a long time. Just hang tight. Okay, gem on curve. I'm going to select this as my target, and I'm going to also make a taper. I'm going to bring these up here all the way to the midpoint, and I'm going to go quickly here, so I'm not going to pay too much attention to like actual feasible proportions or scale, but hopefully you can just imagine that this is all gonna work out. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm gonna make some changes here. I want to place them a little bit below. That looks good. Now I'm gonna delete this because remember it wasn't dynamic. I'm going to create some prongs. And I'm just going to make a few changes to the prongs, and I'm going to select this kind of thing. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to make this. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to mirror. Sorry, I'm going to go to transform and mirror. I'm going to pick this, the prongs, and this. And then I'm going to deselect this center stone by holding Control Shift. And now I have my two sides. I'm going to do a quick Boolean union of these pieces, this, and then these two. And I'm holding Control Shift here since this is a mirrored group. Okay, I'm going to rename this so I know what it is. Scales, see, and I'm just obsessive about spelling it all right. Okay, and then that looks good. Blah blah blah. Okay, be really super annoying if this shut down right in this moment. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna just save it. I I've learned my lesson one too many times. Okay, and I'm just going to create some quick cutters. Some gem cutters. Again, I'm just kind of going faster than perhaps I would if I actually cared how this printed and casted, but and then I'm going to make a channel cutter. I'm going to change this, whoops, to this guy, and let's just look from the side and make sure that this is, make it taller, and then bring it down a bit. Oh, I know this must be so hard to see. Let me just, okay. So I just want to make sure it's coming down far enough. Maybe just a little too far there. Okay. And I might just create a cap that at least gets to the prong, and then maybe just a little bit of a taper, and then a longer, bigger cap. Okay, that looks fine. Now I'm going to do another Boolean here. Boolean difference. I'm gonna grab this object, and then I'm gonna subtract these cutters. Whoops. Wait a minute. Let's try that again. Let's go out of ghosted mode. I'm gonna grab this surface and this and these. Okay. That's looking pretty good, and I'm just gonna get rid of that. Okay. So here is the earring mostly done. I'll just do a few other things. I have a pearl here that's just a wonky surface. I want it kind of like a Baroque-y type pearl. And I'm just going to make a faux cap. Oh my gosh, this is just over the top. I should stop because you probably get the point and then some, but I'm just going to go all the way to the end because I can't help myself. Okay, I'm going to grab this and then make it a pearl, bring it down here, make it a lot smaller. Maybe bring it up. Let's look from the right here. I want to line it up. I'm going to get it right under here. That looks good. And actually, I know that these usually align the wrong way, so I'm just going to flip it over and go into wireframe. I'm going to go to settings, pearl cup. Oops, I didn't. I over-rotated it. Okay. That's fine. We're just going to fix that. Okay. And then I'm going to hide it. Or actually, I'm going to just bring it up here. And let's turn this on so I can actually see what it looks like. Okay. That looks fine. Actually, I'll bring it down a little bit, because I'm going to add a jump ring here. Okay. And I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to align this pearl so that it looks like it's got a cap. I'll bring it up. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to just add a torus. Oops. Let's look from the front here. I'm going to add one right here. Again, I'm not really paying close attention to dimensions here. If I was, I would definitely stop and measure what I was doing. Okay, and then I'm just going to make this, bring this down, and from the right, I'm going to, just twist it. Oh, sorry, I meant to make a duplicate. Okay, and then one more push down of this. That looks good. Okay. Okay, so this looks okay, obviously. I would take a little bit more time just rushing because I feel self-conscious of how long I've required you to wait and watch. I'm going to turn these off and I'm going to hide, woo. I'm going to hide these maybe here. And I'll just make a copy. I'll slide this over using Alt, and then, you know, for rendering, I'd probably just spin this so that they look not exactly matchy-matchy. Something like that. Okay, so there we go. That is kind of the finished product. And hopefully this was interesting to you, and you have gained some new knowledge about how to make increasing or decreasing patterns. Again, it's great to have just an open mind, and using that object on curve combined with other dynamic commands is a really powerful way of creating really interesting patterns. So thanks so much.